And y'all remember that 3 minutes after the hour, 6:03. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be back in the saddle. It's Carol McKinley, hopefully this morning, along with Julie Hayden on the Ramsey case. That is our lineup, 303-713-8255. You heard his work, and you've heard his work for years here on KHOW Radio. His name is Don Reggae, and Don and I contacted one another, or Don found me somehow, or I found Don years and years and years ago. And Don has a wonderful, wonderful ability to do things with music that are far beyond those of mortal men. And disguised as a mild-mannered fellow living in Boulder, Colorado, he appears here on KHOW Radio as Media Horror Productions. My boy, good morning.
It seems like old times, doesn't it, Peter?
It seems like old times again.
We were, you invited me into the station van outside of the Justice Center the morning that the thing came down. I had a stack of CDs I was trying to sell.
Yeah.
In fact, Charlie Brennan got pretty insulted by the whole idea. But all of this is bringing back some of the names. And what I did yesterday was find Steve Thomas's resignation letter online.
Yeah.
And that really summarizes how bad this thing was botched on purpose by Alex Hunter and later by Mary Lacey. But that hadn't happened. It was Alex Hunter torpedoed this from the inside, and Steve Thomas ended up resigning and becoming a carpenter.
Became a carpenter, that's right.
But he wrote a fabulous book, which is still available online. I suggest people, if they're interested in the real story, so many people, and so much time has passed, that people get these headlines or the statements that are in the media that just flash by, such as, well, the parents have been exonerated.
Yeah.
Well, that's easy to say. It's what was repeated, but it's not true. It was never true. And Lynn Woods did a very good job of threatening people beyond...
every time he would threaten me, I'd say, okay, Lynn, let's do it. And he threatened people that would back down. He also threatened people, rightfully so, who would do these indictments of Burke Ramsey. Mm-hmm. And Burke Ramsey's an innocent. But Lynn Woods was always... He's like Evan, a.k.a. Blow Dryer, who said he was going to sue anybody who was going to talk about the Mayor Hancock buying prostitutes. I've yet to see that lawsuit.
Yeah, it would be pretty embarrassing on the stand. And I don't know, even if the Ramseys did go to trial, if they would have taken the stand, they would have been foolish to, because that's when it would have fallen apart.
Well, they wouldn't have.
It would have fallen apart. And
sure.
Have you seen the bootleg video that went around Boulder a while back? I believe Jan Scott was the first one to actually put it on the community access channel here. But it has snippets of the Ramseys' handwriting, that Hoffman
mm-hmm.
guy that got them
mm-hmm.
into a video deposition. Mm-hmm. And that is the most damning evidence of both John and Patsy being shown their own family scrapbook with the captions written underneath the photos, and then pointing to the ransom letter and saying, now this A over here, Mrs. Ramsey, it looks just like this A in your family scrapbook. Do those look similar? And Patsy would go, no. And Mr. Ramsey, can you tell us who wrote these captions in your own family's photo scrapbook? No, I have no idea who wrote those captions.
Maybe we can get that up for folks to see it this morning.
It's extremely powerful. It also has Steve Thomas's summation to the grand jury. This was bootlegged out by somebody, and it eventually, because of Jan Scott's other hijinks, it got the community access channel closed down by the city council.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember Jan, and Jan had that thing shut down. We should try maybe get Jan on this morning as well.
So, I can get you the video if you'd like.
Yeah, I would like that. We were talking to a fellow a minute ago. It's so damning, and in the light of people like Michael Tracy and Mary Lacey and Jameson and these people on these websites and the condemnations and the attacks that came on me and cartooning in the Rocky Mountain News, a.k.a. the Ramsey Mountain News, and I mean, like I said, I have big shoulders. I understand that's part of the game.
Oh, remember when John Mark Carr, everybody turned to you and said, see, Peter, you were wrong all along?
Oh, yeah, and Craig Silverman wanted to make a bet with me that they actually had the true killer. And I went, no, there's no true killer.
Now, that's when it turned into a cartoon. And didn't Mary Lacey end up at Patsy's funeral? Am I remembering
sure.
that?
Yeah, she went, and she's also very much, I mean, she's turned up in so many bizarre things. But some of those people that ended up condemning Corey Voorhees were on the team that went over to Bangkok and got the lady man, John Mark Carr, and brought him back. Some of the people who ended up trying to destroy Corey. It was just an amazing interlocking of people. But I thought, I went back, and I don't keep much. I did keep some stuff on the Ramseys. And I brought out all my old stuff, who was who. And remember Pasta Jayalowski?
You bet.
And he chased a reporter with a handgun.
I thought it was a baseball bat.
He had a gun, a car, and a ball bat. Nothing was ever done to Pasta Jay.
Right.
Michael Bynum.
And who was the guy, Honey, with his wife, Honey?
Honey and Honey. Well, there was Fleet and Priscilla. Fleet and Priscilla White.
Who got roped into some bizarre child pornography type allegation. That went around for a while.
That was there was a rap on his father that wasn't true.
There was all sorts of stuff that was going around. The doctor, Dr. Buff.
Francesco Buff.
Yeah, and
he was the pediatrician. He was the
propensity to give catheters.
But remember, and I went and yanked this out. Francisco Buff, B-E-U-F. He was John Bonet's Boulder pediatrician for the last 3 years of her life. Remember, Patsy took her to the pediatrician 27 times.
Yeah, for urinary tract stuff.
And he went to the same Episcopal church as John and Patsy. The Hofstroms went there. The Morgans went there.
I believe, and I'm not real sure about this, I think they might have been friends in treatment, but Mayor Durgan was very tight with Patsy Ramsey.
And Mary and John Fernie. Remember the Fernies?
Mm-hmm.
And it was so interlocking and so incredible.
Yeah, this is a small town. There's only 100,000 people here.
But remember, they came down, they hired Hal Haddon. And it turns out, Paula Woodward's husband was a ex-husband, was an SNL crook. And Hal was his lawyer. And that's how I always believed, now this is only belief, that she had an inside track through Hal.
Well, Hal Haddon and Alex Hunter had political connections.
They all did.
It was all incestuous at the top. And that's I like the title better than the book, Perfect Murder, Perfect Town.
Too.
It just couldn't happen here, kind of thing.
Well, that was the belief.
And these people are too nice to have done this to their child.
Couldn't have done it.
And then perception became confirmation bias, and the rest just became plowing these things into the press and threatening anybody who would actually point to something. And then Hunter was completely corrupt from the top. But anyway, this gets away from the greatest hits, which stretched over 2.5 years and more than an album, plus bonus tracks.
That's right.
As the case...
Unplugged.
Yeah, and the way it started was I had a long drive to the tech center every morning, and I just moved here. And in 1996, or as the year turned, you switched gigs from an afternoon show to a morning show, I believe.
No, I was.
You were already there?
I was mornings when this happened.
I found you because I had to listen to the radio on the way. And you came out of a commercial break talking about the Ramseys and singing along with Werewolf of London, and that's how it started, although that's not a good one to play. This morning, you've been playing Grand Jury. I think Steve Thomas's resignation letter is something that people should search on. If they aren't familiar with
we'll get it up.
The ins and outs of it, I'll send you a link, Greg.
Yeah, we'll get it up.
It really summarizes the heck out of it and asks some of the hard questions. And can you imagine the frustration of this guy who worked that case for so long to see it just completely?
Remember, he turned in his shield in a lumber. He turned in his shield in a lumber yard.
Yeah, poor guy.
I mean, they ruined that guy. And remember, they brought out the man who never failed, and he came up from Colorado Springs. And he was the cop that was going to solve it all.
The ultra-religious fellow who prayed with them and
prayed together.
Immediately decided that they were
innocent. They prayed to Jesus next to the swing set.
And his name is escaping me. Damn it. Monosyllabic.
That's okay. But when I watching him, if you went around the clock and said, okay, Patsy Ramsey, John Ramsey, Mike Bynum, Peter Hofstrom, Robert Miller. There's another one, Robert Miller.
I'll send you a link to a great infographic that has 6 degrees of separation from all these personalities.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I'll send you that.
And John's defense team, Patsy's defense team.
The thing is, it's been so long, and people come and go through town. I'm not sure how many of your listeners really know the minutia of this. So it'll be interesting to hear some of the previous players.
Remember the woman that was the housekeeper, and Patsy ratted her out, and they went out to her house, and she was wearing Patsy's old shoes.
Oh, they even tried to blame it on Santa Claus.
Santa. Well, yeah. Well, remember that guy went on the Today Show, and he came in and he said God, what was Santa Claus? What was his name? I got to call McKinley. I mean,
you know what? This is sick. So were some of the songs.
How about Linda Arndt?
No, Peter.
How about Linda Arndt?
We need a board game.
Really? Just a second. Hang on. You sit. Listen. I'm going to keep. No. Wait a minute.
It's a board game. And it's all based on this.
I know. You stay right there. Who is it? Who is it? Oh, Peter. Is it Peter Fotopoulos? You want to come on with Fotopoulos? You got any guts? I do. I want him. He's my favorite person in the universe. I put him on hold with Fotopoulos coming on. You can sell tickets to that. 1:15. The Ramsey grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy, but Alex Hunter punked out. Good morning, everyone. Our website, KHOW.com, has our field and stream cover of the Boulder shooting of Big Boy the Elk. We have with us, it's going to be good, Peter Fotopoulos will join us, along with the one and only, my partner in Media Horror Productions, and everybody sitting on hold. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the two and only, Mr. Peter Fotopoulos joins us. He was one of the great hitters in the Ramsey case, and, of course, the one and only, one half of Media Horror Productions, the man with a plan, Don Reggae.
That's the first time the word Fotopoulos and together has been used in the same sentence.
I think you're right. Peter, good morning.
We're like the Three Stooges.
I'm hip. Hey, when everybody speaks, we identify so people know. Peter, you were not, I'm sure, underwhelmed to hear that the grand jury had voted, but I'm sure you were saying it's about time.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what I call the Ramsey go-round. Here we go again. And have you seen the actual physical copy of the Daily Camera?
I have not. Should I?
Okay, it's all capital letters. This huge jury voted in about 2-inch tall letters. It's like a headline you'd use for Japs bomb Pearl Harbor.
Ooh.
It's pretty ludicrous. I mean, sure, it's big news, but it's not that big a deal. But I got online and started reading all the comments on the Daily Camera and the Denver Post website, and it's like I said, the Ramsey go-round. People who have no idea what they're talking about, people that do, and I just turned it off after a while. But Don made some excellent points that I would just reinforce. I actually recorded that video. It was a deposition that Darnay Hoffman, who has since
he's passed away.
Right. When I think it was Chris Wolf was one of the multitude of people that the Ramseys had accused, along with Santa Claus and anyone that happened to walk by the house. They were just lashing out at anyone. So Darnay Hoffman sued on his behalf, the Ramseys, and the video is the Ramsey deposition. And I've always told people this is the single most damning piece of evidence out there because, as Don said, they show the photo albums of the Ramseys, and these are photographs, they're Polaroids, remember, that had that big white margin at the bottom of the picture that you... And in the video, they take letters from the ransom note, the fake ransom note, and superimpose them onto the captions that are written. And what's totally ludicrous about it is they ask both Patsy and John, do you know who wrote this? No. Does this look familiar? No. Okay, who would have written it? And mind you, some of these were done years before the murder, so what, did the foreign factions sneak into there and stealthily write captions in Patsy's handwriting? And one other thing about the handwriting, a lot of people, she was exonerated. No, the truth is, the majority of the handwriting experts concluded that Patsy Ramsey was the most likely author of the note.
Fellows.
And they took what's called in the business handwriting exemplars. And if you remember, one of the biggest jokes was Patsy gave hers in the kitchen of, oh God, who's that flunky with Pete Hoffman?
Mm-hmm.
In his kitchen, he took a walk and just left her alone there. It's like, why didn't she come down to the station? But not only did all of the handwriting experts say, not all of them, but the majority say that she was the most likely author of the note. Out of every single person tested, she was the only person whose handwriting changed from before the murder to after. So obviously she was trying to alter her writing to not make it seem like she wrote the note. But
I don't think there's any question. By the way, we're
remember that the note had no fingerprints on it. So we're to believe that she walks down the back stairway, sees this piece of paper laying on the steps. What does she do? And put gloves and go pick it up? No, she grabs it, she hands it to John, but according to them, of course. But
they
there's
passed
no
it around to all of their friends.
Yeah, but there are two things we need to bring up. One, that guy came up from the Springs was Lou Schmidt. That was brain gas when I was running out to get a cup of coffee. Two, there were no fingerprints on the flashlight. Now, I started out with a conversation.
Or batteries.
Well, I was going to bring it up, and as you know, you would drop them in like mortar rounds. But the I think it was a 6-cell flashlight that was found on the kitchen cabinet, or kitchen counter rather. That was the blunt object that Patsy struck the little girl with. But when she cleaned it up afterward, as she wiped down the flashlight, she also wiped on the batteries and dropped them down one at a time into the battery tube, and then with a towel turned it back on. So when the hard-hitting Boulder police took that battery apart, took the flashlight apart, surprise, surprise, there was no prints. If you came to my house, I have a flashlight. My fingerprints are all over the batteries. My fingerprints are all over the flashlight.
Now you bring a bunch of stuff back. Remember that the neighbor who testified to a scream in the night. Another neighbor who testified to seeing lights and hearing sounds of cleaning.
Right.
And Steve Thomas said that that Patsy was up all night in the same clothes.
Same clothes.
That she wore to
the
White's party.
That's right.
Greeted the officers at 5 a.m. or something at the front door in those clothes with her makeup on. She had been up all night. She did a load of laundry.
Well, they found the sheets of the little girl's bed were in the dryer, and somebody had remade the bed because the little girl had wet the bed.
Well, she was a defecator as well.
She did both. But
for people who don't know the inside stuff on this, and this is very important, and Steve Thomas said that he feels that it was a rage that was set off by probably a defecating event, plus the pressure of having to leave town. She might have had a drink or two at the White. She had some drugs in her because of the cancer treatment. So all of this stuff played in, and they had to leave at 4 a.m. in the morning. All of this stuff was playing into the pressure situation, and one thing led to another. A horrible accident happened, and the rest is when people say, "Well, do you know who did it?" I say, "I know who wrote the note." That's really all. All you can know.
But you can come. Knowledge is a really interesting thing, and belief is an interesting thing. What's clear here in the grand jury, from what I'm able to guess so far, is that the grand jury strongly believed that John and Patsy killed the little girl. And I remember, you remember Petey, and I know you remember as well, the crazy Aunt Pam Paul.
Yeah, who talked to John Bonet and being the
heaven. Remember
one
I said
of the comments you said was, "Well, hell, have her
ask
who killed her."
She called her Johnny B. I talked to Johnny B. Well, come on, Pam, ask her who killed her.
Ask her.
But remember, she said, "I can't wait to get in front of that grand jury." When the time came, not a chance.
Right.
And remember when they went on Larry King? And I mean, they just
a typical hard-hitting interview from Larry King.
How about hold your babies tight? There's a killer out there. And for the first time, that idiot mayor said, "That's probably not true."
Yeah.
And they never pursued it. Hey, Pete, what was the moment for you when you went, "Come on, this isn't working"?
The ransom note again. It's what I call the Rosetta Stone of this case. Number one, it's so ludicrous. If anyone knows anything about this case, there was a yellow legal pad, I think, that was found.
There were actually two legal
had
pads.
Even practiced the note, and she was trying to write something up. And the fact that the Sharpie pen that was used and the pad of paper that was used were in the Ramsey residence, and left there. Now, come on, if you were going to pull off a kidnapping, don't you think you would have written a note maybe
well,
the day before or something? So that was the most ludicrous thing, and the wording of it, and then again, boy, I hope you can get that video up on the web.
Sheik's working on it.
Maybe load it up to YouTube. When you see how cleverly they did this, and they just moved the letters from like the photo album onto the ransom note letters, and they are perfect matches. And it's just, and the whole thing about, Patsy, the clothes horse, being dressed exactly the same as she was the night
same
before.
Makeup.
And remember this, who is it? Henry Lee, the forensics expert, determined that her side of the bed had never been slept in that night. Right. So, and just the way they acted, too. A lot of the comments I saw on the web last night were just people very suspicious of their demeanor and the fact that they wanted to blow out of town. Remember, they were ready to jump on a plane to Atlanta.
John Ramsey
the next
calls.
day. Now, wouldn't you want to stick around if it was your kid? Solve this crime.
John Ramsey calls.
Their actions were preposterous.
John Ramsey makes the phone call, and the cop had to tell him, "You can't leave town." He was gone. They were out of there.
Yeah, they used the excuse, we're in danger here. Oh, yeah, they were the safest human beings in Boulder at that point.
And the cops watched him take boxes of stuff to the hangar.
Oh, yeah.
That was possibly evidence.
Sure.
And they were just walking stuff out of the house.
You remember, who was the chief at the time, Petey?
Kobe.
What a...
Hang down your head, Tom Kobe.
I was going to say, we're going to play that, but he has to be. I mean, if you think Mary Keenan Lacey is the worst district attorney in the world, Tom Kobe was the worst chief of police. Remember when he...
And remember the
famous quote,
the smelliest fish meal in the world that smelled so bad that Mary Keenan had to take it to the Boulder Justice Center, wherever it was, where they had the Ramsey room to dispose it. That was their excuse for the evidence showing.
Listen, I got a break. I'm going to put you both
to access that part of the office at some bizarre hour of the night or something. Oh, I had this smelly fish and didn't want to bother.
Well, she drove it all the way. No, she broke. She broke into the room. All right, I'm putting you interesting turn of events on a. I guess this. I was gone. I was out of town, and as soon as I landed, we turned the radio on, and I heard the news that the Ramsey grand jury voted to indict the parents in 1999, but Alex Hunter went the other way. It is a damning story. On the line with us, and we just added someone else to the show. First of all, in Boulder, Colorado, he was indispensable through all of this. He's great. Peter Fotopoulos joins us. Also, the man who put Media Horror Productions together, Don Reggae, and joining us, and please say good morning. I almost said my colleague, my former colleague, and always has remained a great friend and fought through all of this, was Craig Silverman. Craig's here. Peter's here. And a lineup of stars. You guys.
Now it's the gang of four.
That's the gang.
Craig. I miss your voice.
Good morning, fellas.
I miss it too. I got to ask Silverman this. How did this story leak out?
Well, there are multiple sources, and it's all confirmed by former Boulder Assistant District Attorney Bill Wise, who sat down and spoke with Charlie Brennan. And what I found fascinating is he revealed that there was dissent on the prosecution team. You remember the governor intervened, made him appoint that task force.
Absolutely.
Bill Wise told Charlie Brennan that at least a couple of the prosecutors who were involved disagreed with Alex Hunter's decision not to sign the grand jury indictment. We know one of those wasn't Mary Lacey. Mary Lacey led the charge for the Ramseys for a long time and in the end disgraced herself. You know, it's interesting to think a Boulder grand jury found probable cause against John and Patsy, but they were never arrested. Mary Lacey decided there was probable cause against John Carr, and he was brought back from Thailand.
Yeah. The part about when that happened, John Mark Carr was groomed by Michael Tracy, who for some way or some reason, we talk about the ouster of Ward Churchill, how Michael Tracy keeps that job is way beyond any comprehensions that I have.
Doesn't still work there? I thought they were shutting down their School of Journalism up at CU.
Oh, he's just, but he is he's despicable. He's beyond despicable. He actually goes beyond Ward Churchill because he damaged innocent people. Churchill just shot his mouth off. Having said that, I'm still puzzled. Now what will Stan Garnett do, Craig, as an attorney? Now this falls into and Stan. The one private conversation I had with Stan, I like Stan a lot. Stan never believed. How's that? Never believed that John and Patsy were innocent. Do you think he now will do something about John's still alive?
I have tremendous respect for Stan Garnett. I worked with him in the Denver DA's office. I was his chief deputy for a while. He does not shy away from the big case.
No, he doesn't.
Don't come any bigger than John Benet Ramsey. But let's remember the grand jury said child abuse resulting in death.
Right.
There's a 3-year statute of limitations on that. So unless it's first-degree murder, I don't think that anybody can be prosecuted. Statute of limitations is run.
Peter Fotopoulos, anything you want to ask Craig or join into?
Yeah, serendipitously, I was moving some boxes around in the last couple of days, and I came upon, I would think a bunch of us have one of these, what I call the Ramsey box, full of books, videotapes,
Sure.
DVDs, articles, and one of the things in there was the Ramsey's book, The Death of Innocence, which you called The Death of Intelligence.
Yeah.
And I just flipped open to one of my bookmarked pages, and let's bring Burke Ramsey back into the story. I'm going to read verbatim from this. It's John Ramsey writing, quote, "I remember Burke asleep in his bedroom.
Not true.
I don't want to get him up in the midst of this madness.
Not true.
And wonder what is going on." Are you bleeping kidding me?
No, it's not true.
If your kid is missing and you've got another kid in the house, you don't want to wake him up and find out,
fellas,
is John Benet around? Well, did you hear anything? No.
How about this one?
Again, the story was so flimsily concocted.
Well, he's like when people start to indict the inner circle of the Nazis. And I always said that the worst of any of them was Albert Speer, because Speer knew better. John Ramsey is the worst of the two of them. He's far worse than Patsy, because Patsy is, borderline psychotic, crazy, nutty, and but the worst is John Ramsey, simply because of his cold, calculating maneuvering. But at the same time, Craig, you remember, and I don't know, Donnie, if everybody remembers, when the 911 call, when Patsy calls the police and doesn't hang up, allegedly, I've never heard it, but allegedly, you can hear John tell Burke to go back to bed. And if you remember what the Whites said and the Fernie said, is that when they said it was time for him to be woken up, they go upstairs, they wake this little boy up. He comes downstairs, the house is full of cops. As I always said, the Ramseys had a phone tree. They called every one of their neighbors. They came in and totally contaminated a crime scene. Once again, great work by the Boulder.
Well, remember the ransom note said, "Don't call the
anybody."
cops.
Yeah, and the first thing Patsy does, of course, in the not black and white pulls in the driveway. I mean, it just tells you the loopholes. But the kid comes downstairs. He doesn't ask, why are all the cops here? Why are mom and dad, where's John Benet? Are we still going to Michigan? Why are the Fernies here, and why are the Whites here, and why is Roll Hoverstock here? Why are they all here? Doesn't say a word. He simply gets in the car with Priscilla White and plays with his Game Boy that he got for Christmas.
I think they stashed him at Jay Olowski's house.
No, I don't think he went to. I think he went to the Whites first.
The Whites first.
Whites first.
And I think Michael Tracy probably still has a job, because I looked upon his whole thing as an experiment in media manipulation, because he was able to do it. And it was almost as if he had a cynical ploy going on to see if he could screw up the system. Remember, they brought John Mark Carr back on a private jet with champagne.
Oh, yeah, and some of the same people that ended up trying to, they destroyed Corey Voorhees' career. Those guys were part of that.
So as far as Craig goes, I mean, Craig ran for DA, and it just seems so incredibly corrupt up here. What's your opinion of the corruption behind the scenes at the highest levels in Boulder, Craig, if you can even give an opinion?
Well, sometimes you think corruption, but oftentimes ineptitude could be at the root of it. I mean, Alex Hunter made so many bizarre moves during the Jean Benet investigation. He was right up there with Tom Toby. And ultimately, he had to leave in disgrace. The governor had to take it from his hands. So it's hard to trust his judgment on Jean Benet. Look, people took sides, and Alex Hunter, I didn't know the man well, but that office had a reputation for not being very aggressive. And, you know, if you look at what the Ramsey defense attorneys did, they did a hell of a job for their clients. And they convinced Alex Hunter, even though the grand jury indicted, think about that. Fellow Boulderite said, John and Patsy, you're responsible for the death of your daughter. It was a runaway grand jury.
That's right.
Obviously, Alex Hunter didn't want them to return an indictment, but they did it anyway. And as I recall, Peter, tell me if I'm right, didn't Lou Smith get an opportunity to talk to that grand jury?
I believe he did.
They were apparently unimpressed.
I believe, but Lou Schmidt, I have Lou Schmidt's Christmas card painted on the wall or punched on the wall on my desk. Lou Schmidt was a born-again. The Ramseys professed to be. They all knelt in the dirt next to the swing and prayed, and Lou, I think, at that moment proclaimed them innocent. Do I remember that right, Peter? Yeah. Yep. So I'm going to put you all back on hold again because I need to take another pause, but I felt when I heard this story, let me ask you, I'll tell you what, I'll set this question up. How did the three of you feel when you saw the story yesterday that the grand jury voted to indict them and the DA refused to prosecute? Sheik, if you put everybody on hold, 303-713-8255. Carol McKinley at 7 o'clock. It's K-How Radio. I'm Peter Boyles. It's going to be a shot at rain today. This is K-How Radio. Traffic time. Susan. It is 6:51. We're really backed up 9 minutes before the hour. I do want to talk to former Post columnist Chuck Green this morning. We have a great lineup now talking about the Ramsey grand jury voting to indict John and Patsy for the murder of their daughter. Carol McKinley coming up with us. And we'll have them off and on because this story is going to spread. The DA and the grand jury, the John Benet grand jury voted to indict John and Patsy in 99. Alex Hunter refused to prosecute. Up on our website this morning, we have our field and stream cover for the Boulder Police, KHOW.com. All right, this is Peter Fotopoulos, Craig Silverman, and, of course, last but not least, Don Reggae. So I'm going to talk with Petey. First, when you first heard this story drop, that the grand jury voted to indict and Hunter did nothing, how did you first react?
Well, it was obviously a surprise because none of us had been led to believe that they came to that conclusion. But once it sunk in, I just said, this is more of the same. This case was totally mishandled by the DA's department. And I would agree with Don that the most important book for anyone to read, and by the way, I put a link to this on Craig's Facebook page, along with a very good review
hang on, you guys.
Prosecuting attorney. When you read that book by Steve Thomas, it's called John Benet, Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation. If you go to Craig's Facebook page, I've got a link to Amazon. You can buy a copy for a couple bucks. The way the DA it was like they couldn't have done a better job if they had just plotted from the very start, we're going to wreck this case. And it's just shocking. I've had people read my copy of the book, and they give it back to me and said, I never knew any of this. I can't believe this actually happened.
Let me jump because of time here. Your first reaction, Don, when you saw this story?
First reaction was sadness because the little girl will never get justice. And I think the prime suspect is probably gone anyway. The second was disgust with the general Boulder atmosphere, whether it's ineptitude or corruption. It's prevailing. And the third was anticipation, frankly, because I figure you'll get a week on this, and deservedly so, because you know the minutia that needs to be restated so that people with just a headline stuck in their head don't have the impression that the mainstream media has given them, which is incorrect. And so I hope you do a week on it. I hope you delve into the details that you know so well.
First reaction, Craig, when you saw this? Sir? Silverman. Greg, do we got you? We lose him, Sheik?
Craig dropped.
We lost him. I don't know what to say about this, and we're going to speak with Carol McKinley, and we have calls out to all kinds of different people on other issues. But what's clear to me is the lay down from what we called the Ramsey Mountain News at the time, and I think Craig knows this because I spoke with him in a private conversation. I don't know if you boys knew this or not. Did we just lose Fotopoulos as well? What's going on here? Anyhow, Paula Woodward is writing a book. And I'm serious as a heart attack. And I hope this puts that book in the ground. I hope she publishes it. I hope that some publishing house invested a ton of money in this because she was going after Bill Owens, and Bill Owens stood up during this. He did the right thing during this. There's a lot of people that she was going to condemn in that book. And I wonder how Paula feels this morning.
I think people who are so dyed in the wool are still going to stand their ground. But one person that you might want to consider interviewing, and I don't know her name right now, but it's in the Daily Camera, is they found a legal expert who...
A woman.
Yeah, and she's saying that Alex Hunter may very have possibly broken Colorado law by not indicting.
That's right. So I'm going to bring McKinley on the other side. Again, we're trying to get a hold of Tancredo on this pot smoking thing and Robert Spencer on Benghazi. But I've been told by... we lost our other callers. I don't know what's going on here. By very reliable sources, that there is one more piece of information that is so damning about John and Patsy. One more. And if that ever surfaces, I don't know how John Ramsey feels this morning. As you know, he's become a martyr in some Christian movements.
Didn't he start dating another beauty queen who had lost a child?
But then that didn't work out. It was that woman her daughter was disappeared and everything.
My God, in Uruguay.
Yeah. He married. He's recently married. He's, as I said before, he's the Albert Speer of all of this. He is the worst of all of them. Patsy is Patsy, or was Patsy,
right.
Just a sick, bizarre, psychotic woman, married to this cold, calculating Mr. Business. He is the one who sits there now. And like Speer, he can play any kind of mind game he cares to play. But you'll not hear from these lawyers any more than you're going to hear from the lawyers in the city of Denver about certain stories. It isn't going to happen.
Named Tom Kobe.
I'll play this for you. I love you, man. I'll talk to you. We'll talk to you later. Hang on.
Tom Kobe, hang down your head and cry.
This guy was the sheriff,
hang down your head,
chief
Tom
of police, pardon me,
Kobe,
of Boulder.
You know who, but you'll never know why. Day after Christmas morning, a little girl found dead.